And maybe that's where your story begins. Not with a bright light, not with a memory of love, but with exhaustion. A quiet collapse behind your eyes that no one else could see. You were told to be strong. You were told to be kind. But never once were you asked what your soul came here to do. They called it your personality. But it was a survival strategy. You became the echo of what they needed. A mirror for their pain. A container for what no longer fit in their lives. And somewhere along the way you forgot. Forgot that your soul is not weak. Forgot that your sadness is not failure. Forgot that your mind was coded for a higher memory. A sacred memory that was hidden until the precise moment of your breaking. Because that's the truth no one told you. You were programmed to break before you remembered. Why? Because if you had remembered too soon, you would have tried to save everyone else before yourself. You would have used your light for them, before learning how to protect it. So life broke you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. That moment you fell apart, that was the beginning of the activation. The moment you felt lost was the first signal that something inside you was waking up. You see, you had to forget to remember differently. Not through books, not through someone else's path, but through the exact pain you once thought would destroy you. Because pain is the soul's way of speaking when the world has gone silent, and yours has been screaming. You were never meant to carry their beliefs, their patterns, their karma, but you did. You were trained to hold what was not yours, to feel guilty for wanting peace, to apologize for being too sensitive, too intuitive, too awake. You learned to blend in, to fold yourself small, to make room for others while starving your own light. And now, you're remembering, not through logic, but through frequency, through that strange ache when you hear a certain voice, through that deep pull towards something you can't name, through the cracks in your being that let the light leak in. They tried to break you, but all they did was break the illusion, because the soul cannot be destroyed. It can only be covered, and you were never here to be covered. You were here to become a symbol, a living proof that the ones who fall hardest are often the ones who were coded to rise higher. Not because they are better, but because they agreed to remember what others swore to forget. That's why you've always felt different. Not broken, just interrupted. And now the interruption is ending. The soul is stirring, the dream is cracking, and you are no longer afraid to look at what was hidden. Let it break, let it burn, let it all come undone, because the one who walks out of the ashes is the one who chose this path long before the pain ever began. And now you remember, don't you? Before you were born and your soul agreed to forget, not because it was weak, but because it was precise. It knew exactly what to veil, what to encode, what to allow you to lose, so that one day, in the middle of your quietest ache, you'd begin to remember this wasn't an accident, it was architecture, a divine scaffolding made of symbols, shocks, and soul fragments. Every pain you endured, every relationship that mirrored your deepest wound, every loss that cracked your timeline was part of this structure, because forgetting is the only way remembering becomes real. If you'd been born knowing who you were, if the veil hadn't been drawn, you would have bypassed every lesson your soul came here to digest. You would have flown past your own alchemy, and worse, you would have confused knowing with becoming. That's the disease of the ego, to know without living, to talk of light without surviving the dark, to quote healing without ever touching the wound. But your soul, it's ancient, and it remembers a higher rhythm, so it waited for the break, waited for the day your body would collapse under the weight of everything unspoken, waited for the exact moment your system would no longer sustain the lie, because that collapse was sacred. It was the vibration that shattered the false identity, the false timeline, the borrowed karma, and in that emptiness, a portal opened, a silence wide enough for truth to enter, a fracture vast enough for light to pour in. And what did you feel? Not joy, not clarity, but confusion, fatigue, a strange sense of being at the edge of something you couldn't name. This is where most people turn back, numb out, run to the next distraction, call the therapist, blame the past, but not you, because something inside you whispered, this isn't just pain, it's information. That's the difference between the ones who awaken and the ones who sleep through lifetimes. The awakened don't run from their wounds. They listen, because wounds are messages. In the language of the soul, they are codes, and those codes are personalized. tailored for your specific memory, your specific contracts, your specific light. Your heartbreak wasn't random. Your illness wasn't meaningless. Your betrayal wasn't cruel fate. They were keys, each one, and the lock, your amnesia. See, you were never here to be the pain. You were here to translate it, to decode it, to make it into gold. But decoding takes silence. It takes breaking. It takes patience with your own darkness. That's why your path never made sense to others. It was never supposed to, because you weren't meant to live in the world's rhythm. You were meant to crack it. Your soul is not here to adapt. It's here to awaken. And awakening isn't gentle. It strips, it deconstructs. It burns the version of you that could no longer carry the weight of forgetting. And now, you're in between. Not who you were, but not yet who you came to be. This space is sacred. It's not a void. It's a womb. It's where your real memory begins to pulse, not as words, but as resonance, as knowing without needing to prove, as direction without needing to rush. So if you're here, cracked, uncertain, aching, don't rush to fix it. This isn't a crisis. It's a threshold. And the pain you feel, it's not yours. It's the last echo of a version of you that was never real. Let it go. Let it pass through. Let it complete the message it came to deliver. Because behind that ache is your soul, waiting to be remembered. What if the very thing that broke you was the signal you'd been waiting for? Not a punishment, not a failure, but the echo of a vow made before your first breath. You see, the soul doesn't speak in language. It speaks in symbols, patterns, and repetition. It repeats a lesson until you feel it in your bones, not because you're failing, but because you're remembering. The pain that visits you again and again isn't here to hurt you. It's here to remind you of what? Of who you were before the world named you, before the noise rewrote your truth, before trauma hijacked your timeline. The soul never forgets, but the human mind must be disarmed before truth can return. And that disarming, that's the fracture, that's the heartbreak, the burnout, the betrayal, the death, the moment everything made sense, until it didn't. And suddenly, you were on the floor, empty, stripped, as if life itself had closed a door and locked you out of what you thought was you. But what if that door was never yours? What if it was always meant to close? Because behind it was the performance, the inherited masks, the soul contracts signed in silence to please those who never saw your essence. You didn't break, you escaped, and now you're not rebuilding, you're remembering. This is where the programming unravels, because you were programmed to break before you remembered. Yes, you were inserted into a family system that carried unspoken wounds. You were surrounded by beliefs that numbed your brilliance. You were taught to fear your own power, to shame your own vision, to silence your own intuition. And still, you made it here. Somewhere between forgetting and remembering, you're starting to feel again. Not just emotions, but vibration, energy, truth. You're feeling what's not yours. You're recognizing patterns that don't belong to your soul signature. You're seeing the strings, and for the first time you're not dancing to them, because your soul is waking up in the exact body, in the exact timeline that was once chosen as a prison, but is now becoming a temple. Let that sink in. You were not sent here to escape life. You were sent to transform it, from within. Not by fixing others, not by being good, but by embodying the memory you were told to forget. And that memory is not found in books. It's not given by gurus. It's not bought through courses. It lives in your body, in the part that contracts every time you betray yourself, in the shiver you feel when something is real, in the ache you carry without words. The soul does not speak in logic. It speaks in resonance. That's why some words make you cry, why some images make you freeze, why some songs make you feel like you've been here before. That's memory, beyond this life, beyond time, beyond the script. So when life seems to fall apart, ask yourself, what is this fracture freeing me from? What old version is being dissolved? Because awakening is not about becoming someone new. It's about unlearning everything that told you who you weren't. You were never the guilt. You were never the scarcity. You were never the shame they gave you. You are what survived it. And now you're turning the wound into a door, the trauma into wisdom, the cycle into a spiral of liberation. This isn't about healing for the world. This is about remembering for yourself, because when you remember who you are, the illusion loses power, and once the illusion dies, your real life begins. The irony of the soul's journey is this: what you were looking for was always where you refused to look, in the pain, in the fracture, in the pattern you hated, because buried beneath every wound was a truth you weren't yet ready to carry, a memory too bright for the blindfold of your programming. So the soul did something divine. It wrapped your memory in pain. It encrypted your truth in heartbreak. It hid the key inside the collapse. And only when your ego finally broke open, when your roles disintegrated, when your strength failed, could your essence rise. Because pain humbles what illusion inflates, and in that humbling, your real power awakens. Let's speak plainly now. You were told that pain meant something was wrong, that suffering was punishment, that if your life fell apart, it was your fault. But what if pain is not a signal of wrongness, but a compass, a sacred marker, pointing toward the place where your soul was screaming beneath the silence? Not all pain is unnecessary. Some pain is sacred, and when you stop avoiding it, you start decoding it. You start seeing what it came to teach, to remind, to awaken. Your memory was never lost. It was layered, each layer a defense, each defense a belief, each belief a contract, each contract signed before birth. You said, "I will forget so I can choose to remember. I will walk through darkness so I can embody the light. I will take on their pain so I can alchemize it into freedom." Not as a savior, but as a reminder. You are not here to carry everyone. You are here to reflect what they forgot. But to reflect truth, you must embody it. And to embody it, you must remember it. And to remember it, you must go where the memory was hidden, in your pain. You weren't weak when you broke down. You were sacred. You were in the initiation. The soul doesn't ascend through perfection, it ascends through integration, by holding both shadow and light, without losing the center. That center is what you're returning to now. Do you feel it? That quiet clarity, the one that isn't loud but steady, the knowing that can't be explained, only felt. That's memory. That's you. Not the version that begged for love, not the one that performed to survive, but the one that witnessed it all and never forgot. You are not just a person recovering from trauma. You are a soul reclaiming its design. And that design was not made to fit the systems of control, shame, or suppression. That design speaks the language of soul, vibration, emotion, symbol, silence, which is why this journey feels lonely, why words sometimes fail you, why others don't always understand, because you're no longer speaking from the script. You're speaking from the source. And the source doesn't explain itself, it just radiates. So when others can't understand your path, remember, you didn't come to be understood. You came to remember so you could embody, so others could feel. Feel what? Themselves, their truth, their memory, which, just like yours, was hidden in the pain. You are the mirror they forgot they were. And every time you choose to stop carrying what isn't yours, you give someone else permission to do the same. Every time you refuse to perform, someone else awakens from the play. Every time you love your shadow, another soul remembers they're more than what they were told. This is how the memory returns, not through force, but through frequency. You don't have to explain it, you just have to live it. The pain brought you here, but memory will take you home. The moment you stopped asking, "Why me?" and started whispering, "What is this trying to show me?" was the moment your reconfiguration began. You thought you were breaking, but something else was happening beneath the noise. Your soul was recalibrating because the programming couldn't survive in that frequency anymore. The code was too small for who you were becoming. You couldn't pretend anymore, couldn't keep carrying the guilt that wasn't yours, couldn't keep walking circles inside the maze that trained you to forget. And even though you didn't know the way out, something in you stopped playing along, stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped abandoning yourself. And that's when it started. The glitch, the disruption, the cracks in the matrix of your false self. You started seeing things, feeling things, dreaming of things that didn't fit the narrative. You cried at nothing. You remembered things that didn't happen, or maybe they did. You began speaking in symbols, waking up at 3:33, losing people, losing plans, losing parts of your identity, and it looked like you were losing. But you weren't. You were shedding. The shell couldn't hold your essence anymore. The costume no longer fit. The soul had pressed override, and your system responded. That's why the symptoms appeared. You felt disoriented, emotionally raw, physically heavy or weightless by turns. Time bent around your thoughts. Reality echoed your emotions. You weren't broken. You were recoded. Because the truth is, you are not who you were told to be. You are not your name, your job, your wounds, or your roles. You are a vibration, timeless and infinite, wrapped in flesh for a moment, to remember, to release, to realign. And that alignment isn't something you achieve, it's something you return to. That's why the patterns repeat, not to punish you, but to ask you, are you ready to choose differently this time? Because with each repetition, your awareness grows, and eventually, the loop becomes a ladder, and the wound becomes a doorway, and the memory becomes a power. It's all vibration. The trauma is a frequency. The story you tell is a frequency. The belief that you're not enough is a frequency. But so is truth, so is joy, so is remembering. And the more you choose what resonates, the more the false falls away. You don't have to fight the darkness. You only need to become too luminous to be swallowed by it. That's what's happening now. You're not healing into who you were before the pain. You're becoming who you were meant to be because of it. The system wanted you reactive, predictable, guilty. Your soul wants you conscious, unshakable, whole. And so it allowed the collapse, because sometimes truth needs silence to be heard. And pain. Pain is the silence of the soul echoing through the body, not to punish, but to awaken. You were never meant to stay asleep. That's why you're here right now, because the fact that you're listening to this means the reconfiguration is almost complete. You've stopped chasing answers that betray your intuition. You've stopped waiting for others to validate your truth. You've stopped trying to fit into lives you outgrew. And now, you're not searching, you're remembering. And memory brings power. Power to choose again. Power to create from essence. Power to be what was always hidden beneath the pain. This is the turning point. The void where the old can't hold you, and the new isn't born yet. The sacred pause, the holy unraveling. The moment before memory crystallizes into vision, you've come so far, and though your mind may not understand it, your soul recognizes it. You were always meant to come back to this point, not to restart, but to recode. So here's the question now. What will you choose now that you remember who you are? There's a reason it felt like everything collapsed before this awakening. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You see, the deeper the amnesia, the greater the remembering. The more shattered the identity, the more radiant the soul that emerges from it. And yours is ancient. That's why this world never quite felt like home, why your joy felt foreign, why your sadness ran oceans deep. Because the weight you've carried wasn't just yours. It was ancestral, it was karmic, it was a contract, and yet you honored it. You survived it. And now you're being released from it. But not just released. You are becoming the voice that breaks the curse. The vibration that rewrites the story. The presence that remembers what the system begged you to forget. You are not a passive soul. You are the ancestral reboot. The sacred rebellion. The one who walked into this life knowing full well it would take everything. And still, you came. Because even in the silence of forgetfulness, your essence knew there would be a moment, a spark, a sound, a symbol, a whisper that would awaken the codes buried in your bones. And now, it's happening. You are not dreaming this. You are awakening through it. The symbols you're seeing, how the synchronicities, the moments that feel scripted by something divine. It's your soul speaking again, after lifetimes of being silenced. This is not madness. It is memory re-entering the body. And that body, that sacred vessel you once rejected, is now becoming your compass, because your body never forgot. The tremble in your hands, the ache in your chest, the fire in your gut when something feels true. That's soul remembering. You don't need a guru. You don't need permission. You don't even need to fully understand. You just need to listen. To the spaces between words, to the emotions that rise before thought, to the knowing that floods in without logic. You were programmed to forget, but you chose to remember anyway. And that choice, made in silence, made in darkness, shifts the entire web of timelines around you, because one soul that remembers shakes thousands from slumber. That's why your healing is not just yours. Every time you choose peace over performance, presence over productivity, truth over safety. You unravel centuries of suppression. Yes, you are sacred technology. Your tears are cleansing rivers. Your dreams are transmissions. Your love is reprogramming the grid. So now what? Now you rise, not as the version of you that sought to be accepted, but as the frequency you came to embody, the oracle, the bridge, the flame. You speak now from the soul, not the script. You walk now as a vibration, not a role. You love now without needing to disappear to be safe. This is your becoming, and in this becoming, your past doesn't dissolve. It transforms. The wounds become wisdom. The silence becomes sacred. The pain becomes power. Not because you denied it, but because you alchemized it. And here at the edge of the forgetting, you turn inward, not to escape, but to ignite. Close your eyes, breathe. Can you feel it? That pulse, that warmth, that echo calling you from within? It's not from outside you, it never was. It's the memory of who you were before they told you to be someone else. So remember this, you were never broken, you were encoded, you were never lost, you were hidden. And now, beloved soul, you remember. Our final whisper to the soul. This isn't just another video, this was your activation, and it's no accident you found it now. So tell me, what did your soul remember while listening? What truth began to rise again inside you? Your voice is welcome here. Your memory is sacred. Leave a trace of your awakening in the comments. And if this message stirred something inside you, don't keep it quiet. Share it, because someone else is one breath away from remembering too, and you might be their spark.